Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. I'm your host, Mike Patton. And of course, if you watch the NFL Network, you will definitely know my guest that is with me today. He's been everywhere. I've seen him in Atlanta a few times too, but he's definitely been everywhere. And it's a pleasure and an honor to have him on. NFL Network reporter, Mr. Steve Wyche. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks so much for having me, man. I was so excited when you reached out. I'm glad we could connect and make this happen, man. So appreciate you having me on your show.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I gotta ask, okay, we're gonna take it back. We're gonna take it back to the beginnings in Minneapolis, Minnesota, correct?
Yep. Yep.
Right. Where you're playing quarterback, running back, and outside linebacker in high school.
Oh, that was in St. Louis. I actually moved to St. Louis for high school, for like late elementary school and high school. Mm-hmm.
Okay, got you. So growing up, what did you ever expect to go into this field when you were playing football and sports and things like that?
I did, which is crazy. It's funny, a buddy of mine sent us like a 6th grade graduation prophecy that our elementary school put together. So Steve Wyche will be hosting his own radio show on KSDK, which was an NBC affiliate in St. Louis. And my father worked for KSDK. He was in sales. So I was always around, the media. It was just a weird thing because of him. I'd go into his office, and as I got older, my parents were divorced, but I would, as soon as I could drive, I'd drive down to his office. I'd be in the studio. A couple of his on-air coworkers worked out in the same gym where I trained. So it was just always something I wanted to do, and the fact that I had my eye kind of on that from such a young age, and I'm living that is, it's probably pretty unusual, and I feel very, very blessed.
Well, hey, it's kind of like you fell into all the right situations, and it worked out for you.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of, you say to yourself, like, man, what if this happened, or what if that happened, or what if that happened? Then I wouldn't, then maybe none of this ever happens. Kind of the whole butterfly effect. Prime example. I went to University of Missouri right out of high school to play football, and there was a coaching change after my redshirt year, and it was very obvious I wasn't going to be part of the plans there. I wasn't very good. I was a smaller outside linebacker. I had to add weight. And one day it's like, I got to transfer out, and I got, where can I go? And I had a lot of other options. I ended up transferring to Howard. But, I was saying to myself, what if I decided just that one day to push through and stay at Missouri, or to transfer to someplace else? Maybe none of this would have fallen into place. So, again, I'm never going to go back and say, I wish I would have done this, or what would your older self tell your younger self? Nothing, because things are good.
Right. Now, as far as Howard University, how did Howard University shape you?
Oh, man, it made me a man. I grew up in the suburbs outside of St. Louis. I was one of the few black kids in my town. Definitely in my high school, town Manchester, Missouri. And like I said, I went to University of Missouri for a couple years, but I'd never really been around a bunch of black people until I went to Missouri, and the only black people around were on the football team. And, my mother and father had graduated from Hampton. And so when I decided to transfer, I was actually going to try to transfer to some schools out in California. And then I was like, you know what, let me just apply to some black schools. An old buddy of mine, a black kid who was a tailback in high school, was like, we should go to a black school. We've never had that experience. So it was blind. I filled applications to Hampton and to Howard. The football coach at Howard, Willie Jeffries, knew me from when he was at Wichita State, and it sent me a couple letters, and I reached out to him saying, hey, look, don't know if you remember me, but I'm getting ready to transfer. Oh, I remember you. Come on. Turns out by the time I got to Howard, I stopped playing football. I just lost my stinger. But yeah, and so in terms of shaping me, look, I'm old, right? So when I went to Howard, it was in the 80s. DC was the murder capital of the U.S. Crack trade was booming. Howard is located right in the middle of the cut. And so here I am, this kid who's never experienced being around a ton of black people, being around a ton of crime, being in the streets, right? Very isolated, go right into the lion's den out of the gate. And so I learned to be a man, learned how to survive, learned how to treat people a certain way, learned how to be around a community of people who made me feel very welcome, and been around teachers and learned curriculum of things I never knew because I'd never been taught. I had 2 black teachers my whole life before I got to college. I think maybe I read one book by a black author. I don't know if I'd read any books by indigenous authors or Asian authors. So I go to Howard. So I'm reading all of this. I'm seeing all these different perspectives. So now my mind is just so open and absorbing and things like this. So, there's just so many things about the school, the teachers, the friends, and the city and the environment, especially the work, the competitive grind that Howard put me through that really shaped me to always work harder than everybody else, because someone else wants your job or wants what you want. So, Howard taught me that hustle, man.
Definitely is a special place, because you definitely hear everyone that goes to Howard, they're going to always rep Howard everywhere they go.
It will not take long before you know that you're talking to a Howard Bison.
Right. Now, we're going to switch over to, of course, the NFL, and we're going to talk a little bit about a team. Of course, like I mentioned, I've seen you on TV a few times covering at camp, which that would be the Atlanta Falcons. Mm-hmm. This year they had the chance to get the hometown kid, Malik Willis. Everything's lining up, and then boom, they go with Desmond Ritter. I got to ask, did you see that one coming?
Kind of, sort of. Started hearing some things before the draft that they really liked Ritter. Some of the things he did, he dropped Desmond to the 3rd round as well. And, just prior to the draft, the majority of people I spoke to said, really none of these quarterbacks, they would have given a 1st round grade. Most were 2nd, 3rd, 4th round grades that they had on these quarterbacks. And Malik Willis, everyone says he's incredibly gifted, but, he's raw. And so I think the fact that they went with Ritter, they went with a bigger guy, they went with a more accomplished guy, everything he did at Cincinnati, spent 4 or 5 years there, won a lot of ball games there, played a certain level of competition. That's just what they wanted to do for the type of scheme that Arthur Smith in Atlanta wanted to run. So to say I was surprised that they didn't go with Malik Willis, not really. Surprised they went with Desmond Ritter, probably more so than the fact that they didn't go with Malik Willis, just because of where, in the 3rd round. I'm thinking they really, are they just going to skip a quarterback and try and get a veteran free agent at this point? Or why would they go for a 3rd round pick for a quarterback when they have so many other needs?
Right. We'll see how it pans out in Atlanta. But, of course, Willis lands with the Tennessee Titans. Definitely not in line to be the starter this year, as it looks like. But, what are your thoughts on him just landing here in Tennessee?
Yeah, look, it's a good fit. You look at the scheme, everyone, he's a creative dude, right? He's got to be outside of the pocket a little bit until he kind of learns what he wants to do. So with Tennessee, they run the ball, a lot of play action, set up the big pass, the deep throw. Look, he's got a pro in Ryan Tannehill. I know people got on Tannehill a little bit when he said it's not his job to reach back to the young guy. It's not his job. It's the young guy's job to reach up to the veteran. But Ryan Tannehill's like a good dude, right? Like, he's not somebody who's going to ice Malik Willis out, especially it's Malik is just such a quality human being. That's almost impossible for somebody with any type of heart to do. But I just think, he's going to a club that knows how to win. Vrabel knows how to win. He establishes a certain culture. So, we'll see. We'll see if Malik can, get on the field this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with certain packages for him, mainly running or something like that, goal line, short yardage. But we'll see. Everyone you talk about, he's got a long way to go. He rarely, since youth football got under center. He really at liberty to not have to run defenses because he was so versatile. He saw a lot of vanilla stuff. Rarely did he see a lot of gaming or have to read a lot of different coverages. So that's when people talk about they've got to slow this game down to him right now because it's the matrix at the moment. And he's going to look good, in off-season workouts right now because he's not having all this defensive guys are in pads. But once those guys get in the training camp, that's when, we'll see how hard he's been studying and how quickly he adapts.
It's definitely I actually got to interview him during OTAs, and he's definitely a very engaging guy. You definitely look at he asks a lot of questions. I saw him and Logan Woodside talking a lot and going through a few things, of course, with Ryan Tannehill as well. So it's going to be interesting to see the growth and maturation and how fast that happens. As far as the Titans, of course, plenty of people still think about that loss, that stinging loss to the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs. Ryan Tannehill throws 3 interceptions, and the defense plays well, but the offense just can't get it going, and nobody thinks very much of them, going into this season. What do you expect from the Titans this year?
Look, they're going to be right there for the AFC South title again. I think people. The reason why you say they may not expect much of them is they didn't make any splash moves, right? Their splash move was losing A.J. Brown, right? They go out and they draft Burks. He's a rookie. Everyone says he's got the same prototype. He can have the same type of production, but we'll see. We'll see. That's a big blow. But look, they're getting King Henry back. They had that game. I'll just never forget Jeffrey Simmons had like 19 sacks that game. It seemed like he had 19 sacks. That dude, man, that's the most underrated player in the NFL. He's a great player, by the way. But I think the feeling is that because the Titans have been at the cusp for 3 years now, people are like, okay, that's it. That's as far as they can go. You have had all this talented fusion into the AFC. Russell Wilson's coming into the division. Like all these great players are coming to the AFC conference. So now Tennessee stacked. The Colts get Matt Ryan. So now the Colts are above the Titans. We'll see. We've doubted the Titans before, and they still find a way. But I do think this is like their window. They have got to get through this year, because if they don't, the Bengals aren't going anywhere. The Browns, you don't know what's going to happen with them. There's so many teams that are on the come. The Raiders, the Chargers. It just seems like at some point what they've done is going to exhaust itself.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree there. And, I'm looking at their tight end, which they drafted Chig out of Maryland. They drafted Treylon Burks out of Arkansas, and they drafted Malik Willis. 3 young guys that will more than likely factor into the offense even more next year than they probably will this year. So that's just my thinking about it. But, hey, we'll see what happens. We got to let this year play out, of course. Speaking of differences and changes and letting the year play out, well, the Colts let the year play out, and they let Mr. Wentz go bye-bye. And, of course, they brought in Matt Ryan. Now, of course, no one expected this to happen when the start of the offseason, but of course, rumors go around, trades happen, trades don't happen. Of course, the Deshaun Watson trade didn't happen to the Falcons, and of course, they had to do something there. And, honestly, I think it was probably the best move to go ahead, move him, get started on the rebuild, get moving there. But he lands in Indianapolis. Now, how much of an upgrade do you believe he is over Carson Wentz?
Look, it may not translate into 5 more wins, right? But it will translate into big moment and big game victories, which is something Carson Wentz does not have on his resume. We saw last year they had to beat the Jaguars, and he went down there and had the yips. It seemed like his leadership has been questioned in Philadelphia. It has been questioned in Indianapolis. The one question you're not going to have about Matt Ryan is leadership. I used to cover the Falcons for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution when Matt got drafted in 2008. He came in out of the gate, $10,000, buys a sound system for the locker room. Veterans are like, okay, this guy's cool. Comes in, he's just good. Team goes to the playoffs his rookie year. And he's just got something to him. So that's something. They had it a little bit when Phillip Rivers was there in terms of the younger players being able to adapt, but their younger players are really good right now. I mean, they've got a really good offensive line. They got a great running back. Pittman's a really good receiver. They've got great players on defense led by Darius Leonard. And I think this Matt's big game, big moment, ability to lead a touchdown drive in the final 45 seconds is something that will translate and will make the Colts one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL.
Now, speaking of dangerous teams, of course, plenty are throwing them into the Super Bowl conversation. Of course, they had cornerback Stephon Gilmore. They had defensive end Yannick Ngakoue. Yep. Now, is that enough to put them at the top of the Super Bowl conversation, or is there something still missing?
Well, they should be in the mix. They should very well be in the mix. Again, all of those guys have a certain something. Yannick Ngakoue is one of the best players at his position. You know, the fact he's been this is now his fifth team in less than 2 years. It's right. So bizarre because he's so productive at what he does, and not just the sacks, but the sack fumble or the forced fumble, the way he gets at quarterbacks and knocks the ball out. Tenacious player, just a tenacious player. So, you know, you add him to the mix. You add a Stephon Gilmore to the mix to combat, you know, some of the things that they're going to see in the division and some of the things they're going to see outside the division. They should very much be in the conversation, as should the Bengals, as should the Ravens. We'll see what happens with the Browns. The AFC West is going to be an absolute monster, right? So you really don't know what's going to happen there. But the Colts, I think they're going to be absolutely right there. And the fact that Matt Ryan gets to go there and play in a dome again, those are confines that he's familiar with. So, I think, again, you can't count out the Chiefs. But the Colts, they're going to be a problem. And so, yeah, I mean, I think those additions are enough to get them close. They were close last year. I mean, in week about 13, we were like the one team in the NFL you don't want to play right now is the Indianapolis Colts. And then again, Carson Wentz gets the yips the final 2 weeks, and they don't even make the playoffs.
Amazing, right? Yeah. Well, a team that's looking to move towards the playoffs will be the Jacksonville Jaguars.
That's a long way to move, man. That's a
move. Yeah. Definitely a long way to go. But, you know, they did take a step in the right direction, getting rid of Mr. Urban Meyer and moving on to Doug Peterson. Now, in my opinion, I still think it should have been Byron Leftwich, but we all know why that didn't happen. We're not going to discuss that over and over again. But Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson together. How do you feel about Doug Peterson developing Trevor Lawrence into the guy for the Jacksonville Jaguars at quarterback?
I think it's going to be a good fit. I mean, Doug's a really good guy in terms of, you know, he's played the position for a long time, right? He knows how to relate to his players. I mean, you didn't hear guys up in Philly say anything negative about Doug. You know, Doug got undone by the whole Carson Wentz saga and the fact that they decided the whole Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz thing that undid the head coach. And so Doug's a really good guy. He's a really good developer. Look at Carson Wentz playing at an MVP level. He got Nick Foles to play the best football of his career, and somehow Nick Foles keeps on living up that reputation of winning a Super Bowl, getting contracts, and still being employed in the NFL. So, no, I think this is really good. They've got some pieces around him now, too. I mean, we'll see how, you know, Travis Etienne comes back, because I think he'll kind of be a hybrid running back wide receiver. Some of those young wide receiver talent that they have down there in Jacksonville. So I don't think this is a team that's going to make a momentous type of uptick, but they're going to be better because, you know, talking to some players down there, there's at least trust between leadership and the guys who are going to suit up every Sunday. And that's a big leap from what they had. And that's important because like I said, there is talent down there to be molded. And if they can get a little bit of confidence, they're going to be pretty good. But I think Trevor Lawrence could be one of those players I think he's going to make a sizable gain. It may not translate to 8 wins, but I think he's going to be someone we're going to understand why he was the first overall pick.
Definitely. I can definitely see a jump happening with him. And then, of course, with the weapons, you mentioned they did bring some weapons in. You got Christian Kirk. You got Zay Jones from the Raiders. You bring in protection for him with Brandon Scherf from the Commanders, Evan Ingram from the Giants, which a lot of people are sleeping on. I think he'll be the best weapon. That's just my thinking. which addition, in your opinion, do you think will be the best addition to this team or make the most splash for them?
Doug Peterson. But, if you're looking for somebody on the field, I mean, it's weird because, Trayvon Walker, I think the draft pick. Now, he might not come out and be a 10-sack guy, but him and Josh Allen together and different things that they could do in combination, I think that defense is going to be a handful. I mean, they got some players on the defense. I think the defense is going to be a handful. They went and got Foye Oluokun, the versatile inside-outside linebacker from Atlanta, tackling machine. They've got speed. So I think Walker, now that he's going to find a singular position or be put in positions to succeed, the trickle-down effect that it's going to have on other players, that's the guy I'm looking, again, not for him to come out and have 10 or 12 sacks or have a Micah Parsons type of year, but just how he's going to help all this other talent step up a notch and to make the Jags defense something that people are talking about a little bit.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued, with the Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker combination and how that can be and how they can help Josh Allen as well. But we'll see what happens. It is Jacksonville. I have to always keep that in mind. Even with all the optimism, I still have to remember it is still Jacksonville.
It is still Jacksonville. That's right.
Now, I do have comments in the Touring the AFC South inbox. Tristan Morris, Steve Wyche, legend. So he's actually giving you your flowers.
Hey, I appreciate that, Tristan.
All right. Now, last but certainly not least, we do have to talk about the Houston Texans.
Good.
Boy, Lovey. He's got his work ahead of him. But I will say he's going to build around Derek Stingley Jr., which that's pretty evident with where he took him and, saying that not many that I know really thought he was going to be the guy for them and who they were going to take right there, but they did. Did you expect that to happen, or did you expect them to go maybe offense defense instead of defense offense?
Well, I mean, you heard going up that they really needed a corner more than anything, and I think back where their second number one was, what was it at 12, 13, something like that? That they
the offensive guard, I think.
Right, so they weren't going to get the corner that they wanted. So, it was going to be Sauce Gardner or was going to be Stingley. And everyone's just like, Sauce is a better talent, better player, better talent, more durable. But scheme, okay, we have to remember scheme sometimes. I forget the offensive tackle that came out when Trent Williams came out, but when Washington took Trent Williams first, people are like, what are they doing? Well, he was a scheme fit, right? He was a zone run scheme fit. Now look at how great he is in that type of scheme. So that's where Stingley fits into what Lovey and this defense want to do. And so this is a team to me that I am super intrigued because I think they've made some quiet, very good moves to be a toothache, right? Again, this isn't a team that's going to come out and all of a sudden win 10 games, but teams that play against them every week are going to feel like it's a team that can win 10 or 11 games. I think they're going to be a very problematic and tough out. If Pep Hamilton, the OC, and Ted White, the quarterback coach, fellow Howard Bison, can get Davis Mills going. We saw Davis Mills do some really good things last year under Pep Hamilton's tutelage, and so I think Houston is a team that is going to be that nasty wasp in every team's ear every week, where they're going to build a foundation. I think there's more talent there than we're expecting. That's been caught up in the turmoil and the dysfunction they've had there the past couple seasons. But I do think that Lovey and some of the stuff they're putting together, they're going to be a pretty competitive football team.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. I mean, you saw a little bit of that when they played the Titans the last couple seasons. So I can definitely see the feistiness that's going to be within them. Of course, somebody that's looking for a different start to the season would be Mr. Davis Mills. From what I'm hearing, he's coming out with a little bit more swagger, a little bit more confidence, knowing that he's going to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you expect from him this year, kind of knowing he's going to be the guy, having an offense that's going to be around him, kind of catered to him, and, of course, being led by Pep Hamilton as well?
Yeah, look, there's no reason why Davis Mills can't be a 4,000-yard passer. A guy who's a 28 touchdown, 8 or 9 interception guy. Everything you see. Think about it. This guy was a big-time recruit. He's had some injuries. And that's what made him slide down the draft boards. But the way he performed last year was interesting. Now, was it a case of, think of a bad basketball team in the NBA, someone's got to score 28 a night, right? Someone's got to score. So was that Davis Mills? Well, we've seen quarterbacks on bad football teams not be able to do that. Trevor Lawrence was not able to do that. And were Davis Mills' weapons that much better or worse than Trevor Lawrence's? Probably not. So I think they have something there. I think that familiarity and scheme. And Pep Hamilton's track record, guys. Andrew Luck was great coming out of college, but he got him there at Indianapolis, got him to the playoffs. Justin Herbert, he coached up Justin Herbert to come in off the bench when Tyrod Taylor gets punctured in the lungs with a pregame shot. And now Justin Herbert is what he is. Pep Hamilton's got a pretty good track record at developing quarterbacks. That's somebody I'm stunned he's not a head coach yet.
Right.
And I think this is somebody, again, if he gets it done with Davis Mills this year, he'll be a head coach pretty soon because he's got the temperament and leadership and teachability in him to do so. But I think Davis Mills is gonna end up having a pretty good year. I'm telling you, man, the Texans, we'll see, but I think they've got some surprising talent and a little something working in their favor now that they got the albatross, at least we think, of the Deshaun Watson circumstance out of their locker room.
Yeah. We'll definitely see. What happens. And, we've kind of went over the whole AFC South, kind of, a few little tidbits on the teams. But, of course, it isn't a Touring the AFC South show without the game. We got 5 questions, 2 choices. You got to pick one. Are you ready?
Yeah, fire away.
All right. This one's going to Howard. Jim Trotter or D. Orlando Ledbetter?
Come on, man. The 2 of my best friends.
I
had to push back and say, for what? If we're talking golf game, that's Jim Trotter all day. Right? If we're talking jokes, then that's D. Led all day. So that's those are, the 2 of my best friends. I'm not going either or on that. Those are my dudes, man. You kidding me? I know those dudes for more than 20 years.
Gotcha. I knew what I was doing when I picked that question. All right. I did go to a little Minneapolis, Minnesota theme for one question. Prince or Kirby Puckett?
Prince all day. All day. I'm one of the biggest Prince fans in the world. And here's the thing about Kirby Puckett. Remember, I told you I moved to St. Louis. So I moved to St. Louis when I was like 9 or 10 years old, right? So the baseball Cardinals have been very good to me in my life. They've been to like 7 or 8 World Series. And the 87 series, when the Twins played the Cardinals, was 87, 89? Can't remember. But that's when Kirby Puckett and the Metrodome, when they turned the fans on when the Cardinals were at bat to blow the balls back down on the field. Kirby Puckett and Kent Herbeck had the great series. So I'm not really with the Twins. So Prince all day, but that's irregardless. It would still be Prince no matter who you put up there.
Yes, Purple Rain, still love that song to this day. But they've got plenty of classics. We could pick one anytime.
How come you don't call me anymore? That's still my favorite one. It was a B-side hit back in the day when they made 45s.
Yes. I will say this: D Nice during the beginning of the pandemic got everyone hip to some Prince songs they probably had never heard. So, let's see. I've got a running back tandem here. I got a running back tandem. Let's see: Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry.
The King.
All right.
King.
All right.
Yeah, I mean that's I love Jonathan Taylor, but the King, man, seriously, he just takes over games. He leaves refuse in his wake. And he's got the best workout videos in the NFL now that James Harrison's gone.
He definitely does. The one where he's standing on the little half circle or whatever, and he's trying to keep his balance, but stiff arming people. Man, that's amazing to me.
When he was doing pull-ups on the band with his body in a pike, that dude was like 250 pounds, like 6'5". Strong, man, strong.
Very much. Okay, I've got one for you. Brandon Cooks, or are you taking the field to lead the AFC South in wide receiver yards?
Ooh, that's a great question. And you're talking about receiving yards and not receptions.
Right.
Did Cooks lead the division last year?
I'm not for sure if he did, but he's definitely probably in my vote for the best receiver in the AFC South right now.
Well, I mean, Pittman's pretty good with the Colts, but now that A.J. Brown is gone, A.J. probably led last year. So, I would say Cooks because he's such an explosive dude, and people don't realize how many 1,000-yard seasons that he's had. So, I'd say Brandon Cooks right now.
Right. Now, another tough one. Colts defense or the Titans defense?
Ooh. That is a good one because the Colts lost Eberflus.
Right. Yep.
You know what? I'll still say the Colts because of the takeaway potential. I'm telling you, Yannick Ngakoue, the forced fumbles, you've got DeForest Buckner, one of the best D linemen, Darius Leonard, top 2, maybe 3 inside linebacker. Had some guys in the secondary. Yeah. I'll have to go with the Colts. That's a good question, but I'll go with the Colts.
Well, I don't know if you hear that sound, but some folks in Tennessee are booing right now. I'm just kidding. But definitely that's all I got. That's all my questions. I want to thank you again, Mr. Steve Wyche, for coming on. Of course, anyone's listening, if you want to see him or find him on social media, that would be at Wyche89. That's WYCHE 89 on Twitter. Anything else you want to say? Anything else you have going on?
No, I just appreciate you having me on. I mean, I think it's fantastic what you're doing, the service you're providing to your viewers and listeners. So thank you so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it, Mike.
Yes, sir. You've been everyone. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening and watching the Tour in the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.